Our News on Terror segment tonight. 12 people were killed after suicide bombers and gunmen attacked the Iranian parliament and the mausoleum of Ayatollah Khomeini in Tehran. And now Iran's Revolutionary Guard is blaming Saudi Arabia for the attack. The question is this attack and the turmoil surrounding Qatar, is this a sign of things to come in the Middle East? Watch and see. With me now, former United States diplomat Jim Jatras. Jim, good to see you.
Good to see you, Liz.
All right, Jim, I'm going to pose you that same question that I just asked in the introduction. This attack that happened in Iran, terror attacks, by the way, don't happen frequently in Iran. This is, to use a word that I absolutely hate, this is somewhat unprecedented. My question is this attack a sign of, I guess, a larger issue that the world is ignoring that's getting ready to blow in the Middle East?
I think it is, and I think there's several factors to it. I think we also see that in the spat between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. With regard to the terrorist attack that took place in Tehran, for which ISIS claimed responsibility. In fact, underlying that, of course, is we have the regional rivalry between Saudi Arabia heading the Sunni camp and Iran heading the Shiite camp. There are many deep currents here. I think as far as this attack goes, one of the things we should keep in mind is just as we've seen a step up of ISIS-inspired attacks in Europe, as ISIS's territory is shrinking down, they are going to lash out more at their enemies, which does include Iran.
Right, so sort of like the terrorist diaspora that we were warned about by the U.S. intelligence community late last year. But Jim, talk to me about what's happening in Qatar right now. I mean, essentially, it seems that the Saudis are trying to incite some sort of military coup to overthrow the ruler of Qatar. And my question is, why are they doing that?
There's been a rivalry, again, within, you might say, within the Sunni camp between the Qataris and the Saudis for a very long time. The Saudi claim that the Qataris support terrorism is somewhat bizarre. In fact, the Qataris do, and so do the Saudis. They support ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all the groups in Syria, but that's not what they're being attacked for. They're being attacked for supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a nasty piece of work to be sure, but the United States doesn't put it on the terrorism watch list. And also, I think the real sin is that the Qataris have been talking to the Iranians, who are their close neighbors across the Persian Gulf, with whom they essentially share a gas field. And I think after President Trump's visit to Riyadh, that the effective ruler of Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, thinks he has a blank check to start hammering his enemies because he believes the United States will back him up.
Right, and I think, just to reiterate your point before, I think it's not a binary choice that Qatar does fund terrorism, as does Saudi Arabia. It's a little odd to be pointing a finger for the Saudis to be pointing a finger at Qatar when they're doing it themselves, but it's certainly not a binary choice. It can be both true for Qatar and true for Saudi Arabia, but it gets down to the underlying motivation of the Saudis here. And the underlying motivation of the Saudis, we know this. We knew this before the trip that President Trump took there. We knew it before he sold them billions of dollars worth of arms here, that their agenda is not pure. Their agenda is to export Wahhabism, a violent version of Islam, around the Middle East. We know that.
That's right, and that's why it's a little bizarre, in my opinion, that the president did this. I really like the European leg of his trip, where he read the riot act to the NATO allies for not spending enough money. But I really do not understand what is motivating this all in with, let's be honest, the world's #1 supporter of terrorism, not only monetarily, but inspiration. I mean, look whose textbooks they use in the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. They use Saudi textbooks. It's Wahhabist ideology. Why we are in bed with these guys, I really don't know. This is not America first. This is Wahhabism first.
Well, and I guess this is my question, because looking at it strategically, it is a little bit of a head scratcher. But at the same time, the Saudis seem intent on picking a fight with Iran. They seem intent on perhaps even provoking a war with Iran. Is that what Trump is doing? Is he buddying up to the Saudis so that he can give them material support and they can take on the Iranians, and therefore he doesn't have to enter the war directly?
That seems to be part of it, and some people suggest maybe there's some kind of a grand thing going on that if we completely take the Saudi side in this dispute, they'll rally the Sunni camp, and they will then have an excuse to make peace with Israel, and everybody will be happy, and Iran can be the bad guy. The only thing I guess I don't understand here is what's in it for us. I mean, look, when we talk about terrorist attacks in Europe and in the United States, those aren't coming from the Iranians. It's coming from groups that the Saudis are inspiring and arming.
Right.
I don't really see why we have a dog in this fight. As that noted philosopher Sarah Palin once said, between the Sunnis and the Shiites, let Allah sort it out.
Right, and well, I guess the question would be, if there were some sort of Sunni coalition in the Middle East, would it would it prompt a more peaceful and stable Middle East? And if that's the case, I can see that America has interest in that being the case. But my question to you is, would that actually bring about peace?
I don't think so, and it's certainly not if the Saudis are the leader of it. I mean, I could sort of understand that perhaps with somebody like President el-Sisi of Egypt. Okay, fine. He runs an authoritarian government. There's repression, but it is a relatively secular state, and it is a Sunni state. Why isn't that a better linchpin for the region than the Saudis? Now, of course,
Right.
there's connections there because they both oppose the Muslim Brotherhood. Again, there are all these subcurrents that all have one thing in common. They have nothing to do with us.
Right, right. And forgive me for being skeptical of the nation where 19 of the 9/11 hijackers came from, and perhaps unproven, but likely where a lot of the funding came from, too. Jim, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate your analysis.